Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, or morning, depending on what time zone you're on. My name is Jim Canfield. I'm the Director of Online Services at Champion Solutions Group. We're headquartered in Boca Raton, Florida. Joining me today is Joe DiFrancesco. Joe is an engineer here at Champion, specializing in Azure and Azure-related services. And finally, I've got Morgan Siementhal from Microsoft. Morgan heads up the Enterprise Mobility Suite product marketing team at Microsoft out in Seattle. Without further ado, I'm going to get the presentation kicked off. I would expect that the slides, and we're not going to try to kill you with slides, I promise, should run anywhere from about 15 to 25 minutes. We're going to try to give you a general overview with a little bit of detail on the capabilities of EMS. We're going to then give you a brief demo of the user experience, and depending on time, etc., questions, Joe and or Morgan will happily address those. So with that, I'm going to get kicked off. First slide is just an overview of the agenda. We did point one already. A little bit about Champion. We're going to talk about the Enterprise Mobility Suite and the components that make it up. As I said, a brief demo, and then Q&A at the end. A little about Champion. We've been in business since 1979. Makes us 35 years old. I can do math. We're a $100 million firm. We specialize in Microsoft as well as other offerings. We have been Microsoft Partner of the Year in Cloud and Cloud-related services for the last 4 years running. In different areas, different what are called geos in the Microsoft East, National, etc. We are also a gold competency partner for virtualization, messaging. We have some silver competencies as well, and we were an Azure Circle partner. That program just ended last week. We are grandfathered in as a gold level in the Azure, and over the last couple of years, we've helped move over 1.4 million users to Office 365, and as we grow our online services practice, Azure is becoming a much more critical component of it, from business continuity purposes, disaster recovery purposes, migrating of applications, web-based applications, up into the Azure environment. We're using it for additional points of location of data for things like backup, making data available through and with the Enterprise Mobility Suite, as you'll see as we go forward. So with that said, there's the intro and a little bit about Champion. So the commercial is now over. Why are we here? Today we're here to talk about the Enterprise Mobility Suite, and the reason that the Enterprise Mobility Suite has been put together by Microsoft is they are seeing the challenges related to the top level bring your own device. But the more important piece of the bring your own device is the fact that, and I know you all can read, so I promise I'm not going to read the slides to you, but it is today, more than half of our users are supporting 2, 3, 4 devices. They're saying 3, okay? Expectation is that 900 million tablets will be in use in the next couple of years, and that we need to support the different operating systems from a portable perspective. So with that being the case, we being IT folk have some serious challenges. We wish to make data easily and securely available to our end users, no matter what device they're using, no matter what application they want to access it through, but we still have a fiduciary responsibility to our employers to make sure that the users who are accessing these applications and the data are doing it in such a manner that is responsible, it protects our organization, and in the event that our compliance or chief security officer, or God help us, the federal government show up to see if we're meeting or exceeding our compliance requirements, we need to be able to prove it. So where EMS comes into play is it allows you to manage and to maintain and to be notified of unique behavior. It allows you to manage the applications that are being used, and it allows to centrally administer all of the different platforms that you need to manage today, both from a premise and from a out in the cloud perspective. So the Enterprise Mobility Suite, I know I talked to this a little bit, but it is made up of three primary components. The Azure Active Directory Premium. Basically what Azure Active Directory is a way to replicate your current Active Directory into the Azure environment. The Azure Active Directory Premium then overlays the capability of authenticating into currently over 1,800 software as a service SaaS apps. With the additional value that's been added to it, you can customize it for your own organization. It will provide you with self-service password resets. And what I consider to be a major game changer, the ability to support on-premise web-based applications as well as standard client-server applications that require authentication. So, to put it into a nutshell, probably talk too much for that, but Azure Active Directory Premium gives you a central point of authentication into all of your applications that you have to support. It gives you self-service password resets for your users, which, if for no other reason, can reduce the number of help desk calls. Finally, it is extending and making more valuable the current investments you have on-premise from an authentication, authorization, Active Directory perspective, with a couple of bonuses. One, the ability to connect to whatever directory, LDAP or other, that is out there basically. Two, the ability to allow your users to access these applications from any device while never delivering the actual passwords or tokens to whatever device they're looking at, either in browser, cache, or other. And finally, notifying you when a user, or if it's not a user, is trying to access their infrastructure from Timbuktu or whatever. You have the ability to develop those types of policies to overlay and fully support for multiple factors of authentication. So if you wish to use soft tokens, hard tokens, one-time use codes via cell phone or text message. So that's one of the three key components of Enterprise Mobility Suite. Number two is mobile device or mobile application management. We all needed another acronym, so I hope you all write that one down, ma'am. Mobile device management is a service that is being delivered through to the EMS suite through what's called Microsoft Intune. Intune is a standalone product that's been available from Microsoft for 4 or 5 years. It is a cloud-based system center or desktop endpoint management solution that they have developed MDM into, and they are extending it into the Azure environment. It allows you to control times, dates, access points, etc., as well as to deliver selective wipes so you don't blow away an ex-employee's only pictures of his children or something along those lines. And then finally, the application that we've all been looking for, we've wanted to implement for many years, Active Directory Rights Management. And in this case, it's called Azure Rights Management. It allows you to, at the file level, based on Active Directory Azure groups, allows end users to assign different levels of rights to files. Example, CFO or accountant is working on the payroll file. We all default to the payroll file because it's easy to understand. And I need to send this file after I update it for bonus reasons or whatever to the CEO, to the CFO, and George in my organization. I can send it to him, but prior to doing that, I can assign certain levels of rights such that this file can't be forwarded outside of my organization. Okay? So I send it to the people that need to see it, The CEO looks at it and says, oh, I want to look at this when I get home. He goes to forward it to himself at his Gmail account. I'm just making up something. It won't allow that to occur. It'll come up and say you're breaking policy. CEOs love that. But for all intents and purposes, it gives you a way at the file level, easy for your end users to use through the standard Microsoft applications, as well as the access rights, what you can do being inherited directly from Active Directory, control where these files can get delivered to. So all in, that is the Enterprise Mobility Suite. The good news is the Active Directory rights management can be applied to your premise file shares, your premise SharePoints or other content management solutions, as well as, and equally, to hosted environments such as SharePoint and Office 365, Exchange and Office 365, OneDrive for Business, which is something that a lot of people are looking at. And for those of you that have the box or Dropbox or others, I have the ability to copy files from my local drive or my local share into my box or into my whatever. Okay, those Active Directory, the RMS policies go with the file. So in the event that I go to my box and I double-click on the file and I'm not authenticated into my domain, it's going to come up and say, hey, you need to authenticate. And if the authentication is valid, whether it's a single login name password or you want to have a one-time use code, you have the ability to put that level of control out to those wonderful areas and wonderful application suites that we're all discovering every time we get a bill at the end of the month and we have to approve it. So it enables you to put a much more granular level of control on the files as they go around your environment, and even when they're taken off net, they're secure. So with that, I will move forward. Now, what we just talked about is a significant investment in planning, strategy, and time. Okay? And the good news is that you can implement it quickly. And as you implement it, you have the ability to tweak it, to improve upon the granularity. So for example, tomorrow, I can implement multi-factor authentication into my Outlook Web Access, or perhaps into Outlook or into SharePoint or whatever, where when an end user wants to access an application via a device from home, they go to their SharePoint site, click on it, their cell phone rings. They have to hit the pound key to verify that they are who they say they are. I'm using a very basic example. Applications, perhaps I have some published apps or browser-based apps, same type of thing. And then, as we go forward, first, front-end access. Who are you? We're authenticating in. Great, from all the different devices. Once we're authenticating in with the multiple factors of authentication, we've added a significant improvement to our typical security environment, and in most cases, unless you have a corporate requirement, we can, in most cases, remove the need for that VPN client. We all love supporting VPN clients out on the end users because they love it so much. Then, as you get more comfortable with the capabilities of the Mobility Suite, you can begin rolling out Active Directory rights management at the data file level. But the good news is you've got this management platform that's watching, letting you know what's going on, while initially giving you the MDM and MAM management. I hate talking in acronyms, sorry. And multiple factors of authentication. It allows you to easily, and I'll use the word slowly, but probably the better word is strategically begin to roll out the rights management policies that you want to do at the file level. So it is a easy-to-use process that you can learn over a period of time and get more comfortable with and add more value to your organization. So now, a couple of specific features of Azure Active Directory Premium. I know I've talked to a lot of these, okay? But at the end of the day, the true value of Azure Active Directory Premium is the multiple factors of authentication, number one. Number two is the support and the delivery of a single point of authentication. And I keep saying authentication very specifically for a reason. It is a central point of who are you, prove it. Authorization, what I can do once I'm authenticated, still falls into your individual lines of business silos, whether it's Oracle, whether it's Gmail, whether it's Office 365, whether it's SharePoint, whatever. But what we're doing is we're front-ending it with a strong multi-factor authentication process that's capable of connecting to whatever application that you want to connect it to. Okay? It allows you then through SaaS integration, through other API levels of integration, and as I'll show you at the end user level, you can even go so far as to publish applications into it that users actually have to implement their credentials or individual credentials. A lot of people use it for, like I use it for Autotask, which is our professional services environment. So we'll show you that as we go forward. Okay? And with the advent of Azure Active Directory Premium, again, I'm repeating myself a little bit. I apologize, but I consider it really important, is built into the Azure environment is what they call machine learning, okay, and policy-based machine learning. So when users are trying to log in from wherever they shouldn't be, it's going to notify you. It's going to act based on the policy you put in, and it's going to notify you. So with that, Morgan, did you have anything else you might want to add on the AD Premium? I know it beat it to death, but I thought I would give you an opportunity to chat because I can bore people after a while, you know.
No, I think you covered it pretty well. I mean, I think Microsoft is trying to address two big trends going on, right? The first is BYOD and consumerization of IT, right? But I think the second one, which is kind of not as well known, is kind of this idea of bring your own cloud, right? And a lot of companies are seeing the fact that their different business groups are going ahead and lighting up their own third-party SaaS apps. So how does IT go ahead and manage that? And basically, we're trying to build a cohesive solution that addresses both BYOD and bring your own cloud in one single solution. So I think you touch on most of the major points. And as you see here, it says 1,800 SaaS apps. That's already increased. We're well over 2,000 already. That thing is growing on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, I mean, we're definitely putting a lot of investment into Azure Active Directory, and yeah, that's the basics of it.
This is an overview of the architecture when we're talking about Azure Active Directory Premium within, for lack of a better word, the hybrid enterprise. Okay, as you can see, you've got your Active Directory on premise. You can then extend it either via just synchronization with write-back. In other words, I'm replicating from my AD up into Azure. I have the ability then to enable or not enable, depending on my corporate preference, the ability to do write-back. And write-back basically means as changes are made in the Active Directory in the cloud, it can write back to your premise AD, or you can just centralize it and have all changes have to come from your AD. There are reasons for both, and we're not going to go into them in this call, but or what a lot of our clients are beginning to do is either through MPLS or just a site-to-site VPN, we will extend your network into the Azure environment, and basically what we're doing in that case is we're taking you on net to Azure and allowing you to have the level of authentication, the level of security that would make hopefully your compliance officers happy, as well as begin opening up the opportunity of utilizing the cloud, Azure and others, but utilizing these environments as a business continuity mechanism, as a way to move. I mean, we all started with test dev in the virtual days when we started 10, 12, 15 years ago, whatever. Well, now we have the ability to move either production or production, test, dev, etc., directly into that Azure environment. So it is a reasonably straightforward, easy to adopt, and extremely secure method for extending your premise infrastructure into the Microsoft environment, in this case Azure. Okay, Azure is the central focal point for everything Microsoft, if you will, from a software as a service, whether it's Dynamics, CRM, whether it's Office 365, Intune, etc., etc. Microsoft is moving all points of authentication into the Azure environment, while supporting Linux, while supporting Oracle, while supporting access to other directories. We all grew up in the world where Microsoft thought Oracle was a devil, and Oracle thought Microsoft was a devil, and God knows what. A few months ago, I logged into my Azure portal, and I went to turn up a new VM, and one of the choices was an Oracle DB VM. I about fell out of my chair. So anyway, moving ahead, Intune. Intune, as I said, is specifically focused on the endpoint, whether it is a mobile device for mobile device management. It can also be extended for desktop management. So in the event that you have System Center, for example, in the event that you don't have a centralized Windows upgrade service or a WASA service, in the event that you don't have a place to centrally manage licensing, in the event that you're looking for a software distribution mechanism, not only for Windows updates, but for Acrobat and all the other third-party applications you support, excuse me, the capabilities of Intune are pretty phenomenal, with the added benefit of being able to spin up a System Center instance on-premise connected directly to the Intune environment in the cloud, and be able to not only manage your desktops, mobile devices, but servers, applications, etc. But in this case, we're going to talk about the Windows Intune specifically as it relates to mobile device management, and for all intents and purposes, it will give you the ability to support the different operating systems, the iOSs, the Google, Android, and of course Windows. Surprisingly enough, it supports Windows 8 management. Gives you the ability to apply policies. It gives you the ability to do selective wipes. It gives you the ability to control what applications can and cannot be installed on the endpoints. And it also allows for users to do self-enrollment or self-de-enrollment of their devices. And as a IT person, it does give you the ability to do a selective wipe and or to enforce the use of higher-end, for lack of a better word, higher-end mail clients, application clients, etc., to make sure that your users are using something that meets or exceeds your organization's security policies. Okay? Windows Intune is quickly becoming one of the top MDM, MAM applications. There are point products that are out there that have more depth from a feature perspective, but I believe that you will see Microsoft catch up to them reasonably quickly. Next 90, 180 days, I believe that they will hit that top right quadrant, if you will, from a Gartner perspective. So we've all watched Microsoft do what they do over the last years. I wouldn't expect them not to get to where they need to be to lead the market. This is an overview of the architecture of the Intune environment. You'll notice that it's got cloud-based services as well as, I'm sorry, I apologize, the ability of the endpoints it can manage, bring your own devices, etc. And it all replicates from a DirSync perspective into that same Azure environment that we were talking about. So finally, Azure Active Directory Rights Management. Okay, it is what I said it was. It is the ability for you to empower your internal security team, empower your end users, empower line of business managers to understand what data is going where, who's got access to it, and why they do, and where they shouldn't, and what should be done from a policy perspective to control that individual to the file level, and not just Microsoft Office documents, but you name the file format, we can pretty much support it. With the added benefit, many organizations are concerned about NSA or other governmental agencies showing up from an encryption perspective. Microsoft does support and will allow you to support your own Kerberos key or multiple other encryption keys, which means the NSA has to come to you to get the key. Hey, if they show up with enough guns, I'm guessing we're all going to hand up the key, but we all have lawyers for that reason. So rights management, again, is a straightforward, reasonably easy to use, inheritable process that not only applies to email, Microsoft Outlook, Word, PowerPoint, the Office Suite 2007, 10, 13. It applies to the browser-based applications, and it can be applied to non-connected environments if it's a USB key, if it's a Dropbox, the other examples that I gave to you earlier in the call. With the true value of Active Directory rights management, you have it built into your Active Directory. It's been in Active Directory since 2003. It was one of Bill Gates' absolute requirements. He says, I want this in there, and it's been in there since 2003. 2008, it got better. 8R2, it got much better. 12 and 12R2, it is absolutely great now. Now, when you take it, you apply it to your premise. And here's one of the neat features, is if you integrate into Active Directory up in Azure, you actually then have the ability to use that as, I'll call it a test bed. You have the ability to control the files that are sitting out in these cloud-based environments. Could be Office 365, could be a file share that you've got published, whatever, and apply those rights outside of your physical wire right now to those files that are sitting out in the cloud, so to speak. And as you become more comfortable with them, you then have the ability to bring those policies back to premise and begin rolling them out to your U drive for your users or whatever you guys use for whack shares, your on-premise SharePoint, your on-premise content management, whatever solutions that you're using, and the actual policies, et cetera, can be applied pretty much across the board. So with that, we're basically approaching the end. Microsoft, this is one of their primary go-tos for 2015, actually. Today, the Enterprise Mobility Suite is available under enterprise agreements only. It is something that today they're offering, you guys can read, they're offering a significant discount. When you commit to a minimum of 250 users, they're down to about $4 a user per month. Now, that goes on to an existing EA, and you get that really discounted price until the next true-up. At the true-up, it goes up to the $6.50. But be that as it may, Microsoft is open and is setting up proofs of concept. Actually, Morgan, myself, and a few others, where we spent a good deal of time last week, because we were all at what's called World Partner Conference in Washington, D.C., developing the processes to go through from a proof of concept perspective. So we're very excited about what we're going to be able to deliver to the clients. It'll be a quick, easy understanding of the capabilities of the Enterprise Mobility Suite. It'll be a completely non-invasive proof of concept, and it will give you the ability to, shall we say, stick your toe in the water, for lack of a better word. So with that, the picture that you're looking at is actually a live environment that exists in what's called myapps.microsoft.com. So any of you on the phone that have Office 365, for example, if you open up a browser, go to myapps.microsoft.com, you will be challenged for your login name and password. Put in your email address, put in your Office 365 password, and you will come up with a screen that will likely show you your Microsoft Office 365 Outlook Web Access, If you have Dynamic CRM, it will show that, and it will typically show SharePoint if you're using that. But with that, ask Joe DiFrancesco, who I introduced earlier in the call, to give you a brief overview of the screen that you're looking at right now. So, all right, thank you, Jim. So this panel itself, it isn't anything that's pre-constructed with the exception of the Office 365 applications. I configured this to show these different applications that are part of the 2,000 apps that are presently available. Now, there's two different kind of applications that is available on the portal. One that has password single sign-on, and then one that has Azure-based single sign-on. The password-based single sign-on programs, for example, Autotask, rely on a browser plugin that we have pre-installed. Now, the browser plugin does not store any passwords on this machine whatsoever. That's the important piece. The plugin essentially allows for secure communication between your browser and Azure Active Directory, so that when I click Autotask, if Azure has my password stored in there, it will actually plug it in for me and log me into the service. And if you caught that, it was really quick, but you saw it opened up Autotask, username and password was completely blank, and it automatically filled it in for me. And if I blinked there, I wouldn't have even have seen it. So that's one thing that's really nice. You set the password once. If you ever need to change your password, you just click the little dots, update credentials, and then the rest is self-explanatory. It's very simple. Now, the other applications that use the Azure-based authentication, like Salesforce, Google Apps, there's a few SAP ones on there now. A trust has been set up between Azure and that third party where it actually takes your Azure Active Directory credentials, regardless of if you have the browser plugin, so whatever your Office 365 username or password is, it passes it along and it authenticates you automatically. Now, I did not pay Google for Google Apps, so this is probably not going to work. If it does, cool. But needless to say, it passes the credentials on. There's no prompt for username or passwords, nothing from Google or Salesforce. It just takes your Azure credentials and throws it in there automatically. And because there's the trust, you're authenticated. So now you have your local Active Directory passwords that you manage in Active Directory users and computers as you would as normal. Directory synchronization then takes them up, synchronizes it with Azure Active Directory along with your credentials, and then your users are essentially using the same username and password for all of their online services. So it's one set of credentials to manage. Nobody will be essentially calling up, be like, hey, I forgot my Salesforce password, or hey, my SAP password is not working. So for the admins to manage this, you essentially go to, if I spell it right, the Azure Management Portal, as if you were to put up some infrastructure, some VMs. I'm going to log in. And this portal, by the way, is being completely replaced by a brand new one that's coming out very soon. It's part of Microsoft's modern UI theme that you see on Windows 8 and such. So it's the Azure Management Portal. If I want to deploy some VMs, I just go in there and do it. But how this relates to Azure Active Directory is you have this Active Directory section where all of these lines that you see in here were essentially Office 365 accounts that were made standalone that I added them to my Azure Management Portal. So the one we're using for the demonstration, the CSG Azure account, this is where we see our users and groups. This mirrors exactly with Office 365, and if the users are cloud only, you could do editing and such in here. The applications are what you saw in the application panel essentially. So
Google Apps I was using as the example, I have a user list in here where it tells me if they were assigned access to Google, if they were not. So what's really cool is the applications like Google or like Salesforce, and I'm just mentioning those two mainly because those were the ones that I had accounts to where I can demonstrate, or used to have accounts to for that matter. There's a lot of others that support the Azure single sign-on, but what's cool is they also support provisioning from Azure. So my user list is active. Most of these guys are coming from Active Directory. If I want to give them access to Google, all I have to do is click it and basically just assign it in here. And what this will actually do is it'll initiate the provisioning commands through the third party's APIs, whatever method they're using. But this will actually, if I click Bill here and click Assign, this is going to make Bill a username in the Google service itself. And then, of course, it's going to set them up for single sign-on where they can authenticate and see it in their application portal as well. So, and how simple this is let me go back to the portal here. I see Jim has TeamViewer, Salesforce. Let's add one he doesn't have, ServiceNow, which I believe is single sign-on, a true single sign-on one. So let's do Box. So I'm going to go to the user list, find Jim. It says he is not assigned, so I'm going to assign it. And what's neat is if it's a third party for the password synchronization method, if it's a third party where you control the credentials yourself, you can actually preload the credentials. So it's going to assign it. It says it's now been assigned. And after a few moments, might take up to a minute, basically I'm just going to refresh this page. It's eventually going to tell me, and it already did, your applications have updated. Click here to refresh. And then Box is now on here, when before it wasn't, where I click Box and it'll ask me for my username or password. So it's very simple, very quick, and it's really convenient because if you add all the SaaS applications on here that your company uses, you just have to give them one address to go to now. Be like, hey, you go here, you're a new employee, or somebody just transferred to a new account where they have a different set of applications they require. Just say, hey, go to myapps.mycompanyname.com, because you could, of course, CNAME it, and then be like, okay, use the same username or password you use in Outlook or on your computer, log in there, and you have everything you need to know. You don't have to give them this big list anymore where you say to log into Salesforce, go here, do this, do that, jump 3 times. You don't have to do it for Google. It's all automatic. And because of Azure Active Directory Premium, you can manage everything at a group level. So you can dictate your IT group gets all of these applications, and if John Smith was just hired, you just add them to your IT group, and then boom, they have all of these applications. For testing purposes, if you have 365 already without Premium, you can still go in the application panel. You can still add your directory to your Azure Management Portal, exactly how I did here. It's just to set up these applications, it has to be one by one. It has to be manual per user. And they do that just to really give people the ability to test it out on their own without buying the service. But needless to say, if you have a few hundred users, or even if you have 10 users, you really don't want to be assigning each of your applications manually one by one, whereas Premium gives you the ability to add them to groups. So now, and then I showed you how to assign them. This is the list of applications that I presently added to this account. If I want to add a new application, it's as simple as clicking Add, and then it gives you a few options in here. Add an application my organization is developing. So this is a proprietary app that you're hosting in Azure or you're developing. I'm not an app developer, so I'm not going to go crazy with that. The third one here, publish an application that will be accessible outside your network. This is using a new Azure premium feature called the application proxy, where if you have an in-house application that you're hosting in your local environment, it is not Azure, and it's locked down to the point where you can only access it internally. The application proxy is exactly what it sounds. It's an application that's run from your local environment that acts as a proxy where you can tell it local application A will then have a public CNAME that's available to Azure to hit from the internet to anyone that you've granted permissions to. So it's still locked down. It's not like you're opening a public address where anybody can hit it and try a brute force username or password. It's specific people in your company who are in Azure Active Directory. You granted permissions to them. Only they can access those applications. So the traffic hits the Azure CNAME, it authenticates them, and then it essentially reroutes you through that application proxy. So it's pretty cool. The gallery is the place that has the now, and as you can see now, almost 2,200 applications. When I first started talking about this a few months ago, it was at 1,100, so it's growing really, really quick. The featured applications, like you can see Citrix here, DocuSign. I'm just going to pick some random one in here. App Dynamics. So I'm going to click it. If I want to give my company access, I hit complete. And then App Dynamics is there. Configure single sign-on. This is if it's an application that does not have Azure single sign-on capabilities, it gives you the option to set up password-based single sign-on, or if it's something that you already have single sign-on set up, whether it's SAML, ADFS, or whatnot, where you have a public address that you have your users go to authenticate, like salesforce.domain.com. You can tell it existing single sign-on, and it'll basically ask you what that address is that you direct them to, and it'll essentially give you a link in the My Apps portal. So it's very convenient if you already have single sign-on set up. And then to assign a user, just like I showed you before, it's just a matter of clicking it. And this demo account we're using does not have premium set up, so we just have a user list here. With premium, we would have a separate groups button here. But just like before, I just click them and click assign. And that'll become available in their portal. So it's very, very simple. Now,
I think the big thing here is obviously we're showcasing and Champion showing off that with Azure Active Directory Premium, you have the functionality to do all the single sign-on for third-party SaaS apps. Now, what we've found is a lot of companies have this misconception that their internal business units might be actually using upwards of 30 different cloud apps. Well, that's not really the case. We're actually finding that they're using a lot more than that, and sometimes upwards of 300 plus. We've designed this tool. It's called the Cloud App Discovery Tool. It's free and it's in preview today. I will pass that link. It's just appdiscovery.azure.com. And I would highly recommend that you work with Champion to go ahead and use that tool to figure out how many cloud SaaS apps are being used in your organization today, just so you can get kind of a baseline of where you stand, because a lot of times IT organizations just don't really know. So then you can take that information from the Cloud App Discovery tool and use that as I said before, your baseline to figure out, okay, what am I going to put into my apps portal so I can get everything covered and make sure that I'm secured if an employee decides to leave or we have to let someone go. Does that make sense?
We're going to answer yes because everybody else is on mute.
Got it. I'm trying to think of anything else. I think you covered a lot of major bases here. Obviously, it's very difficult to show multi-factor authentication in an online demo like this, but the process is very, very streamlined. It's really clean. We've been doing demos on it for a while, and that's just a simple text or call. I can't think of any other main bullets to go over there, but I think that cloud app discovery tool is pretty huge. The other thing that I didn't get to touch on when we were talking about Intune is the fact that I think we've noticed that once we actually deployed Office apps specifically for the iPad, we've seen that a lot of companies really want their users to use that app for work. Well, obviously coming from Microsoft, we're going to be slowly integrating more and more with Office with Intune. So we have this tight integration, and we want to be the main go-to MDM for those devices that are using Office. So you're going to be seeing a lot more of that in the future. But I think that's about it.